Hello, and thank you for joining our webinar today. Our presenter over here is going to be Natalie Fieldson. She is one of our solutions consultants, and she is here to give you a little demo of TrackVia and how to build a quick little app in our system. Just to give you a couple housekeeping. Couple things here. Everybody is defaulted to listen only mode. Please submit any questions into the chat window. We will certainly cover those at the end and do any Q&As that come up. The webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a copy of the recording within the next 48 hours after this. And we will go ahead and give Natalie the show now.
Consultant here. As Kim mentioned, today we're going to be walking through a demo of building a simple employee request application. But before we get to that, we'll cover who we are and kind of what TrackVia is, the tools and resources that are available to you to learn TrackVia while you're in your trial. Then we'll walk through that building of a simple employee request application. And if we have time, which I think we will, we can do some Q&A at the end. So to get started, who is TrackVia? We help organizations rapidly turn key business processes into enterprise apps without coding, right? So we're a low code platform where you can build these apps through a drag and drop interface and help make sure that processes are followed correctly. You can analyze those processes and see if they're working as expected or not, automate and streamline steps to increase efficiency, and drive real-time data with insights, data insights and visibility, right? So helping get those processes off of spreadsheets or disparate systems and into one system where your users can follow a process and follow it correctly. Now, we have a lot of different use cases that people utilize TrackVia for. Some really custom, some a few more generic, right? So some of our more common use cases in our application that customers are using us for are quality control, field services, service delivery, compliance and risk management, assets and inventory, project management, really any area of your organization where you might be emailing spreadsheets around or again, have disparate data in systems is a good use case for TrackVia. So anything where you're kind of tracking that data through a process. Now, I know you guys are in a trial, so I wanted to walk through a quick kind of slide that shows really a common way to create a workflow application in TrackVia. So TrackVia is made up of kind of these elements that you're seeing on the screen, and these are what you put together to create a TrackVia application. So your tables are really going to be that foundation where your data is collected, right? So you're going to set up those tables and fields on those tables, and then create the relationship between those tables so that you can create that underlying relational database. After you have your table set up, you're going to want to set up your views, right? And you can create those views to include the data for the relevant end users and kind of what you want to see in those specific views. After that, typically we move to our forms, right? So creating those custom forms and adding the fields to the forms for data collection. Next, we want to take a look at our roles. We set up those user roles to permit those end users to see the data, the views, the forms that is relevant to them, making it easy for them to use the applications. Next, we can take a look at our flows. So in our flow builder, we'll set up a series of views and forms in a workflow for a user. And then finally, kind of coming together, creating those dashboards by adding kind of all of these different elements that we just talked about, the views like the charts, graphs, the grids, our flows, and our forms to our dashboards. So we'll take a look at that when we get to the TrackVia application. And with that, I'm going to exit out of here, and we can go ahead and jump right into building that custom application. So I'm going to pivot, and what we're looking at now is that TrackVia Web version, right? So we're logged into our TrackVia application. This probably looks pretty familiar to you guys. Over here, we have that TrackVia logo, what serves as a home button throughout the application. You'll see here I have a project tracking title. It's because I'm in a project tracking application. And if I select this here and I click in, you'll see a list of all of the different applications that I have in this demo account. So anything kind of from what the common use cases we talked about, deal flow tracking, facilities audit, field services, just a lot of different applications. On average, each of our customers have about 6 different applications in their account. Some have one and stick that way. Others have upwards of 70 different applications where they're running their entire business on TrackVia. Now, as you see here, these applications can all cross app connect, right? So if you have data in your asset tracking and maintenance application, but you need to utilize that data in a different application in your account, you can definitely do so. So that helps reduce kind of those data silos in your organization, and it's really easy to connect that. Now, I'm logged in as a super admin here, so you'll see I see this super admin toolbar along the top. You guys will all see that in your TrackVia trial account as well. And these are kind of those different elements that we just walked through on that last slide. So the tables, views, forms, dashboards, etc. All of the tools that make up a TrackVia application. And we'll jump into using those in just a second. But before we do that, I do want to take a minute to talk about kind of the different resources that you have available to you in your trial to help you get started and really learn the application. So if I navigate over to our help section over in the top right corner, and I select help, you can see some of those different resources. So our knowledge base is going to be a really good comprehensive look at how to build and do different things in the TrackVia application in written form, right? So if you're looking for something where you can just jump in and take a look at something and read really quickly, a great place to start. We also have a community forum, so you can go in and take a look at some questions that other TrackVia users have asked and kind of see how those were answered. And then my personal favorite is TrackVia University, which is an online LMS where you can go ahead and go in and watch videos on how to build and do different things in TrackVia. It's a really great resource where you can kind of follow and build along with the instructor and will really help you to better understand the applications. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started building, and we can take a look at building out this employee request application. So what I'm going to do here is actually select this and jump in and select Start a New Application. It'll bring me to this screen where I can choose to start from scratch or start using an Excel spreadsheet. I actually have an Excel sheet that has a list of some employee data, so we're going to actually start with that. If I select this, we can give our app a name, and we'll just call it our employee request tracker. And then I can hit next. This is going to bring us to our import wizard so we can import that Excel spreadsheet. We'll call this our employees table. And then I have that sheet over here where I can just drag this in, and it'll pull in that Excel spreadsheet with the data that's in there, right? So you can see we have IDs, names, job titles, etc. I'm going to hit next, and now we can map that data and select the data or field type that we want it to map to. So you can see our employee ID is a number, single line for a name, job title. We have a drop down for active or inactive. In this case, I do want to change this to a drop down list. And then we'll hit next, and it'll start importing our data. You can see that we added 8 records, so it was successful. So we'll finish and we'll view our table. So we've imported this data, it's sitting in a table, and we're off to a good start, right? We have all of that data that we just added, as well as some system fields as well. Now, before we go in and create a request table, one thing we want to do is actually change the record ID from just the employee ID. These numbers might be great for a computer to read, but if I'm looking at a record ID and I see 17, I have no idea that that is Ethel's employee ID. So we want to go into our table editor and just make that quick change. So I can jump to our tables dropdown, hit this pencil button here, and then up here is where you can change that record ID. I'm going to add this in here, add her name as the second part of the record ID, and hit done and save that. So when we jump back out to our employees table, you can see that the record ID now includes the name, so it's a little bit easier for a human to read. All right, so from here, now we have our employees table. We want to go in and add a request table. And when you're thinking about your tables, right, you're going to want to include kind of all the information about one thing on the tables, right? So we have our employees table, and then we're going to have a request table. So all of our employee info is going to live on this employee table. All of the request information is going to live on the request table. So you think of it kind of like Excel when you're creating the different worksheets. Things that might be on one sheet in Excel might be on one table in TrackVia. So let's jump in and let's create a new table from scratch. We're going to call this our requests table. And then we can start adding fields that we want to include or data that we want to collect regarding our employee requests. So these are all the field types that we have available to us. Anything from your single line, paragraphs, numeric fields, choice fields, which are really helpful for keeping your data clean, date and time fields, and then some specialty fields such as images, documents, links, etc., location, and then your pretty standard calculated fields, which are really anything like a formula that you would put in Excel. So to get started, let's go over and drag this over, and we'll select a request name, maybe a request description. If I can type today, there we go. And then maybe we want to do things like a request type. Maybe this is an IT request, could be a office supply request, or maybe it's a break room snack request. All right, and then maybe we also want to do a request status here. Pending, approved, and denied as those statuses. We can also add a date in if we wanted to as well. So we'll just say this is the request date. We'll change our auto counter name to a request number. So here we've added the fields that we want to collect information on the table and kind of what information we want to collect. Now the great thing about TrackVia and low code is we can do this all without any coding required. And if we need to make changes, if there's a new piece of information we want to start collecting regarding requests, we can come in and add fields as we go along, right? Just because we've selected kind of these 6 pieces of information or 6 fields that we want to collect now doesn't mean that set in stone and we can't make any changes to them. Maybe we have a new request type, we want to come in here and add that in, totally possible and fine to do so, right? And again, that's kind of the beauty of low code. So now we have this table. Let's go ahead and hit save. And then what we can do is take a look at our table relationships. So let's go look at our ERD. And in here we can see we have our employee table and our requests table, but they're just kind of floating out there. They're not connected at all. And we need to change that, right? We want to set it up so that employees can have many requests. So let's go in and add that relationship in by switching to our list view. And what you want to do is you always want to create that relationship from the parent level. So an employee is going to have many child requests records. So we'll go in and add that in from our employee level. So a record from employees is going to have many records from requests. And then we'll just title this the name of our parent table. And we'll go ahead and create that relationship. So if I switch to my ERD view now, we can see those tables have been connected, they've been related, and we can see based on the fork that an employee has many requests. Great. So now another thing that we also want to do is let me jump back out here, and I'm going to jump in and create some views, right? So we have kind of these default views. They include our system fields, which are not great, not always useful. So we'll go in and just create a view for each of our tables. So if we go to our employee table, we'll just call this our employee view. We'll toggle all of these user fields off, and we can save and finish that view. Let's see. So now that I've done that, you can see I have this kind of grid view. It'll look pretty similar to that first one we imported it, but minus those system fields. I'm going to do the same thing for requests, even though we don't necessarily have any requests in there yet. We'll just call this our requests view, and we'll take off kind of these system fields. So we're following that kind of same workflow we looked at the beginning. We've created our tables, we've done table relationships, we've created our views, and the next thing we want to do is create forms so that we can actually collect the data that will go into these views. So we'll start out, you'll see again, there's some default forms. These are going to include, similar to the views, all of the fields that are on the table. So that'll include those system fields as well, that aren't really relevant to the end user. So what we're going to want to do is create a new form so that we can have one that looks a little cleaner and doesn't have those default fields on there. So first we'll start with the employee. So we'll jump in here and we'll call this our new employee form. Right, so we have this blank screen. You're in our form builder. It looks a little similar to our table editor, but you'll see over here on the left that really we only see the fields that are on that specific table, right? So those fields that we created, and then some of the system fields that we don't really need. So we can just start dragging and dropping these over. And we'll give it a title. So maybe we want to do employee info. This is get some section settings for our form. If we want to change the form colors, we can use those theme colors and apply those. So now we've created this form, we'll hit save, and that is that. Next, we can go ahead and create our request form. So if I jump in here, we'll do the same thing, a new request form. We'll change the title here. And you'll see again, all of these fields that we created that were on the request table. Except you'll see another field right here with a different icon next to it. That's our relationship icon, and that's the employee. So this is because we created that relationship between our employee and our request table. We can now add the employee onto this form so that when an employee is filling out an employee or a new request, they can select themselves as the employee that is filling out that request. So go ahead and pull these over. When I pull that relationship field over, you'll see that this will pop up to ask for some field settings because it is a relationship field. We'll leave it as this for now. We can also do is switch it to the employees view, and we'll do that there. And now we'll hit done, and that employee field is now on this table, or on this form, excuse me. All right, we can now drag and drop the rest of the fields that we want to include onto this form. And again, you can include all of the fields that are on the table, or you don't have to include all of them. You can include a few, some. It's really up to you and what you want the form to accomplish. I'm also going to add a widget in here just to make it look a little nicer. We can put a spacer over here. Let me see if I can drag this over. Oh, I already got it. And then we can title this as well, and we'll say this is request information. Great. So now we've created this form as well, and we have kind of our forms all set up and ready to go, ready to start collecting that information. Now, the next piece that we want to take a look at is actually our roles. So we can look and see and permit people to use the forms that they need to see. So let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at kind of this default role that was created. All right, so this is what our role builder currently looks like. You can see here we have our limited user or app admin. I'm going to go ahead and make this an app admin, and you'll see those kind of other fields disappear. This is because the app admin has access to all of those as well. So we can go in. I'm going to assign myself into this role. And then you can see here the different tables that we have created in this application. So we can look at these and we can open them up and we can choose the forms that we want this role to use. Again, we can jump in here and assign different views and different forms. I'm going to move through this a little bit quickly, but hopefully this gives you a bit of an idea of kind of how to assign those roles or those forms and views to specific roles. Pretty simple. You can also get pretty granular with who can see what information and what they're allowed to interact with. So you can get pretty in the weeds with that to make sure that you're only letting the user see and interact with information and forms that are relevant to them. So we've gone ahead and done that. We don't have any dashboards yet, so we can come back and assign those dashboards later, but for now, I'm just going to save this. And you'll see that that role has now been saved. So we have a role, we have our forms, we have our views, we have our tables, but one thing we do want to do is actually create a flow. And building out a flow helps the end user really interact with a form in a way that makes sense. It makes sense if there's a series of forms you need to walk them through, or views, really to walk them through in a way that makes sense for your process and in an ease of use way that they can walk through it easily. So let's go ahead and jump into our flow builder, and we'll create a workflow really simple for an employee to add a new request. So if I jump in here to the flows button, I'll select create a new flow, and we'll call this submit employee request. You'll see here we have some different kind of tasks over here, so we can create new task decision points. We're going to keep this pretty simple, so I'll drag this new task onto our flow builder screen. You'll see here when I do that, this pops up on the right hand side so we can edit the task. We're going to call this task submit request. And what we're going to do here is add data using our new request form. We'll put a custom save label as submit request, and then we'll create an endpoint, and then we'll just connect all these. So a really simple workflow, right? We can get pretty robust with these as well, create decisions and decision loops that loop back. So you can add more information or view different data, but for now, we'll just leave it as is, and we'll save that flow. Okay, so now we've created that workflow. The final kind of piece that we're going to do is actually create a dashboard, and then we can create some different views as well, put on that dashboard and kind of add some data in. So let's jump over to our dashboards. You'll see we don't have any dashboards created at the moment, so we want to change that, and we really want to add some different elements to the dashboards. So let's create a new dashboard here, and we'll call it our employee dashboard for now. You'll see beneath this, we have the different elements that we can add to our dashboard. So we can add, a flow, we can add views, forms, different widgets, etc. For now, let's go ahead and add that flow button that we just created that workflow for. And then if we wanted to, we could add maybe our employee view so we can see our list of all of our employees. Let's see if I can squeeze this in here. And we could add the other views as well if we wanted to take a look at some of our different requests. If you wanted to add the form straight onto the dashboard, you can do that. Sometimes it doesn't always look the best. So for now, we'll just go ahead and leave it as is, and we'll save this dashboard. So now we've been brought back out to this dashboard. Let's go back to our roles and assign ourselves this dashboard. So again, I can jump in here. We'll go ahead and select that. And we've already granted access to the view that's on here. We'll hit done and save. And then let me just refresh my screen really quickly. You'll see we're in the employees request tracker. I'm just going to favorite it so that it comes back at the start whenever I hit the home button. And then now we can actually go ahead and go through and submit an employee request, right? So if I jump in here, it's going to ask me for my name. So I can just go ahead and say, hey, I'm Ethel. The request number is an auto counter, so it'll save as is. Maybe I want more LaCroix. Please get some more LaCroix in the break room. This is going to be a break room snack request type. and maybe status is pending since we're just submitting it. And we'll put that request date as today, and we can go ahead and submit that request. So now we've submitted one request. If we went over and took a look at our requests view, we can go ahead and see that it is in there, and that is the request that we just submitted. Now, if we go back actually, and maybe we want to submit another employee request, maybe we'll submit one for Jim, and he needs a new chair, right? So he needs a new office chair. Request type is going to be office supply, again, a pending status, and we'll say today's date. We can submit that request. So now we have kind of those two requests in there by two different employees. What I want to show you before we wrap up is actually just a different kind of view type, right? Where we can look and view at some of the data in chart form. So let's go ahead and go in and create a new view under the request table. We're going to actually call this requests by type. And then we can select the fields that we want to be included in the view. We don't want any of these system fields, so we'll pull those off, but we'll leave everything else in here. Now what we're going to do is actually jump over to format it and format this in a way that is a chart. So you'll see here we have a little grid. We're going to actually select the chart button that's next to it, and then we can select a chart type. We'll just go ahead and do a pie chart for now. And then we can choose kind of what data we want to see in the chart. So I can click in here and I can actually say, you know what, actually I want to look at the request type. And we'll group it by this field. And then you can see we have one request for a break room snack and one request for office supply. So we'll save and finish that. It'll pull us out to look at the view, and there it is. And then as we add more data in and we get more requests, we can see, hey, 50% of our request types are coming for break room snacks, others for office supplies. So really taking a look at the data in different kind of view forms. Any data point that's collected in TrackVia, whether that's through forms or pulling that data in through the Open API or pulling that data, importing that data via a spreadsheet, any of that data that is tracked in TrackVia can be charted in TrackVia. So you can get pretty robust with your charting, and then all of the data is drillable, right? So we can take a look at this and we'd say, actually, I want to see the records that make up this 50% for break room snacks. We can click in and we can see this is the requests that are making that up. And then finally, right, we can go in and add that view to our dashboard. So I go back to our dashboard editor. We can click in here and we can see that new chart is in our views. We can pull that in and we can add that to our dashboard, save that, and then now it's on that employee dashboard screen. So again, really customizable, right? We have all these different elements that are making up this TrackVia application, but we can then put them onto these dashboards in a way that makes sense for end users. Maybe the employee dashboard doesn't need any charting and we just want to have a separate analytics dashboard for someone on our HR team to take a look at, right? So you can get, again, as customized as you need to make the experience for your end user as fluid as possible. And that pretty much wraps up kind of everything I have for today. I'm really thankful for everyone that attended. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to field them now. All right, and it looks like we do have one question regarding mobile. So someone was asking kind of what the mobile experience was like, and if we do have a mobile app, and we do. So we are native on iOS and Android devices. So you're able to go to that Google Play or Apple App Store and download the TrackVia application. With that, you get all of the functionality that comes along with your device, right? So you're not going into a separate mobile web experience. It's a native application that can take advantage of your device's capabilities: photo capture, geolocation, offline mode, barcode scanning, signature capture. All of those are available inside that mobile app So really great for field services use cases or anything where you're going to have someone that might be on a mobile device entering information. So that's definitely possible. And if you'd like some more information, we can definitely follow up with some information regarding our mobile capabilities as well. I think that is the only question. So really appreciate everyone's time today. Thanks for spending 30 minutes with me. If there are any follow-up questions, again, my email I think is in this presentation at the beginning, so feel free to reach out with any questions you might have, as well as I believe our team will be following up with a recording link for this as well, so you can reference it and take a look back. But really appreciate the time today. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.